Welcome back to another News of the Week episode. So this week we definitely had a lot of signings and a lot of transfer rumors that has happened. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about Charlotte FC, who has officially announced their first ever head coach in club history, as they announced Miguel Angel Ramirez is going to be their club's first ever head coach. Now, for those of you that don't know who exactly he is, he actually coached in the Brazilian Serie A a couple of years. His last club was with Internacional, and he is also a relatively young head coach from Spain. He's only around 37 years old, I believe, and we started to kind of start seeing some trend where not only MLS players going down to South America to find those hidden gem of a player to bring them up to develop and eventually sell them off to Europe. Seems like it's started to kind of be the case in terms of the coaching realm, where we start to see these young head coaches, and especially the one in South America. And we shall see whether or not if this, of course, will work out for Charlotte FC, and it'll be also very interesting to see how he's going to do with Charlotte in his first year. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, and now talk about some of the transfer signing. Well, there's no doubt the biggest signings of this week is Nashville SC, who they splashed the cash in this week's transfer, as they have officially signed Ake Loba from Monterrey CF for a club record of $6.8 million. Now, this has been a rumor we've been hearing about how there was definitely a case that Loba could be coming to Nashville SC, and certainly Nashville desperately needs a number 9, and they think that he could be the one. Now, he's still a relatively young player, and his goal scoring record is not bad in Liga MX, and we've seen before where players, when their goal scoring record is not bad in Liga MX, maybe they can also accelerate once they come to MLS. But there's also no doubt that this is just kind of an all-in move for Nashville SC, knowing the fact that they are not only not afraid to splash the cash, but they are really sending a message that they are definitely for business, and they're going to finally solve the biggest issue that they have so far in this team, which is the number 9 position. And we shall see whether or not if Ake Loba is going to be the guy that is going to be the main goal scorer of this team, and going to score maybe double-digit goal for this Nashville SC side and fix this long problem that they've been having ever since they came to MLS, which is they don't really have a reliable number 9. Now, Atlanta United have signed Amar Stadich from Montreal in exchange for up to 150,000 general allocation money, and I thought this is a good signing for Atlanta United. I mean, I thought during the time when Stadich was in Montreal, he was a relatively decent player. I'm not quite sure why exactly he decided to not, or Montreal decided not play him as often, but obviously I thought he was a good utility player, especially in that midfield, and no doubt that Atlanta will take it. And that when you look at how their team is decimated with injuries, it is pretty clear that they need some reinforcement, and I think Sadich is going to be that guy to be a good utility player, and slots in right away with the way that they have so much injury that is pretty much riddled throughout the entire starting 11 of their team. Now, FC Dallas have loaned Thomas Roberts to Austrian club Klagenfurt. I think that's how you say it. Now, Thomas Roberts, he is also one of those young kind of FC Dallas player coming out of the Dallas Academy, and I'm just going to assume now that if you are a player that comes out of the Dallas Academy and you're going to make the jump to Europe, you're definitely a very good player. And Thomas Roberts, he's definitely somebody that I don't think a lot of people have talked about how talented he could be. But now that he is going to be making that jump to Europe, and albeit, yes, he is going to be going to a club that have just been recently promoted in the Austrian Bundesliga, and this is not like what we saw with Brennan Aronson going to RB Salzburg and going to the best team in the Austrian Bundesliga, but he'll at least get some experience with that club, and she'll see whether or not if he does break out with that club, he might get a bigger money move, or maybe if it doesn't work out, there could be a case where Dallas could bring him back, because again, they're only loaning him to their, I believe it's only like one season that they're going to be loaning him from, but we shall see whether or not if this is going to work out. But moving on, in terms of the next news, is that the Galaxy signed Julian Arago to a contract extension till 2025, and this is not a big surprise because Arago has been a staple to this Galaxy team, and one of those young American fullback in in this team. And I don't think he, with the way that, yes, he is a promising player, but I don't think he might be there enough to be a level where he could definitely have a huge future with the U.S. men's national team. But certainly he's a very serviceable player, and he's kind of like one of those Gold Cup kind of type of player for the U.S. men's national team. Which again, I was kind of a little bit surprised he was not selected in the U.S. men's national team Gold Cup. Or actually, I might be completely wrong. He might actually have been selected to the Gold Cup, but nevertheless, he is a very important asset for this Galaxy team in terms of their back line, and it's no surprise they decided to sign him to a contract extension till 2025. But now moving on in terms of the next news, and now talk about the weekly crazy rumors where we always hear there is a aging European superstar player that eventually going to come to MLS to pretty much wind down his career. Well, this week in terms of that latest European superstar player that is going to do so is Sergio Busquets, as there is a rumor out there saying that the Barcelona midfielder might be linked with multiple MLS club. Now, Busquets, he definitely is way past his prime, and he's definitely not as good as he once was when he was in the top of his game, and also when Barcelona was really the prime Barcelona and a team that was considered the best team in the world. And there's no doubt that it's also kind of unsurprising as he gets older and how has not been as good as he is a couple of years ago. The same goes with Barcelona, and you can definitely see Barcelona is starting to go on a fire sale, getting rid of a lot of these players that was part of that core that made them so good a couple of years ago. So yeah, we shall see whether or not if a couple of MLS teams might think about signing him, and if they do potentially sign him. One thing that I do worry is that teams are going to try to make him a DP kind of player. And if that is the case, I have a feeling, I won't be surprised if Inter Miami is going to think about doing so, because Inter Miami does have a history in terms of signing player that may be way past their prime, but they're still just going to make them a DP kind of player, and almost kind of stuck in that MLS 2.0 mindset, where this is what MLS 2.0 was all about, where a lot of these teams are just bringing these kind of aging European superstar player that they're bringing there not really to just improve their team. Well, in some way they try to do so, but also it's because they want name recognition, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people know who Sergio Busquets is, and whoever does get him, they definitely will get a lot of butts in the seats if he does decide to come to MLS. Now, speaking of another aging European superstar player that could potentially come to MLS, is Carlos Tevez. And believe it or not, Tevez, he's not considered retiring. I mean, despite the fact that we thought that when he decided to return to Boca Junior, his boyhood club, we thought that was it. Like, we thought this was just a case of a classic kind of great story where a player started out with his boyhood club, eventually got his dream move to Europe, and really lighted up there and becoming a legend, before coming back to his boyhood club to pretty much come full circle in terms of a career. And I thought Carlos Tevez, that was going to be the case, but he's actually saying he's not considered retiring, and instead he actually wants to come to MLS to get his one last paycheck. Now, apparently there has been a couple of teams that's been rumored to get him. One of those teams, believe it or not, is Minnesota United, which, again, I'm not surprised the Loons decided to sign him, because I think on their Reddit page, I know some people say the Loons are literally Boca North, because, they have signed so many Boca Junior player in the past. Well, I wouldn't say not. They have signed a lot of Boca Junior player in the past, but recently we definitely got a lot of Boca Junior players. Some of them are good, and then some of them are not so well. But Minnesota is not the only team that's been linked with Carlos Tevez. I believe Atlanta, LA Galaxy, and unsurprisingly, Inter Miami is going to link to try to get him. And apparently, I have heard there's rumors that Inter Miami might be the team to trying to get him, which, yeah, I don't know how that's going to really help. Like, I feel like if Inter Miami does sign Carlos Tevez, this might be a bad idea, because I feel like they probably did not learn from their same mistake when they decided to get Gonzalo Higuain. And, I did even say that as well as Gonzalo Higuain he was definitely way past his prime, and it just feels like, you can't just expect him to be a guy that's going to be like what he was in the prime, and that's what Miami was banking on. And if they decided to do the same thing with Carlos Tevez, they basically might be in another situation where they could have like a Higuain situation. So, I'm pretty sure if you're an Inter Miami fan, I know the front office want to get Tevez because of name recognition, but it just does not make any sense because you're just going to have another Gonzalo Higuain situation that they're currently stuck with right now. But now moving on, away from some of the transfer reports and signings, is that the League Cup schedule has been officially released, and it turns out the League Cup final will take place on September 22nd, and I believe that's in the middle of the week, and actually it should be in the middle of the week because that's when is really the only time when the League Cup can actually have their games, because you can't have them during the weekend because that's when MLS is basically happening. The same goes for Liga MX. But the first round, I believe, is going to be happening in August. It's going to be in that midweek between August 10th to August 12th. And, for those of you are asking me, am I going to be thinking about doing some League Cup previews and reviews, or mostly reviews? Maybe. We'll see whether or not if that is the case. I am starting to maybe take this competition a little bit more serious, knowing the fact that whoever wins this competition does get an automatic berth to the CONCACAF Champions League, and you know how much I rate the CONCACAF Champions League. So I just feel like with that being added, it isn't as much of a cash grab as I once saw, in that the first edition of it, I really thought the League Cup was just a cash grab, and this is just a meaningless kind of tournament where they're trying to set this up not only to just showcase what MLS team and Liga MX team battling each other and really showcase who's the best team, but it's more because of the fact that they want to make a ton of money. And I have a feeling this is going to be the same case again, but at least this time, even though it's a cash cow, there is something that the winner of this tournament is going to get, and of course is that elusive CONCACAF Champions League berth that they're going to have heading into next season. But now moving on, in terms of the next news, is Montreal has withdrawn from hosting the World Cup in 2026. So the Quebec government have just says that they are not going to let the city government in Montreal basically said that they're not going to host the World Cup in 2026, and it's understandable why they decided to withdraw, because it was pretty clear that if they were going to host the World Cup in 2026, they need to have some major renovation that's going to done at the Olympic Stadium. And you talk about stadiums that has been in some hot potato kind of turmoil. The Olympic Stadium is a clear example of it at Montreal, and it is pretty clear that it was obvious that the city government and the people of Montreal was not going to pay for an expensive renovation for that stadium to get ready for the World Cup in 2026, because they did the same thing about 40 years ago, or now almost 50 years from now, and it did not go well whatsoever. I mean, there's a good reason why Olympic Stadium is not only called the Big O, but it's actually called the Big O for a reason, because that stadium literally they didn't really bankrupt Montreal, but really hit that city into a really deep depth situation. And it's no surprising that the city government and also the people completely reject the idea that they want to do a renovation, because they don't want to have that same situation that they had about 50 years ago. Like they're not going to fall for that again. And not to mention the fact that there's also a reason why a lot of these big cities started to pull out from hosting the World Cup, because they already know that FIFA, yes, they do bring the tournament to their city, and theoretically you think that it can help like the local or the local economy and stuff like that, but in reality it isn't. That is actually not the case. I mean, they take all the money in terms of the match day revenue and all the watch party and stuff like that. So if that's the case, that's really not making revenue, but more like you just hope that it's a successful event, and maybe some people will visit around your city to kind of help your local economy. But if you are expected to maybe earn some match day revenue from those World Cup hosting your city, no, that's not how the World Cup of course works. So yeah, but moving on, in terms of the next news, is that former head coach Patrick Vieira has now become the head coach of Crystal Palace, and I kind of want to mention this because just want to keep track of how these former MLS head coach and where exactly they are. And we talk about with Thierry Henry, where he's now back in England and actually doesn't have a head coaching role after he left Montreal. But I was also following the situation with Patrick Vieira, where he was coaching with Nice, and I'm guessing he did not have a good time in terms of that, and now he's going to be becoming the next head coach of Crystal Palace, and basically replacing longtime head coach Roy Hodgson in that spot. And it's going to be interesting to see how Vieira does do in terms of that job. Just don't ask Frank de Boer in terms of suggestion of how to head coach that role, because it's not going to go so well if you decide to ask Frank de Boer how to actually do a good job in terms of coaching a Crystal Palace team. But now moving on into the last two news on this board before we get to the power rankings is that the player of the week goes to Ignacio Aliseda, unsurprisingly, because he put up an amazing performance in not the last game between the Fire and Atlanta United, but the previous one, which, oh my god, I kind of forgot who exactly the previous one was Chicago versus Orlando City, but the one that he put up a good performance was the game between the Chicago Fire and Atlanta United. So unsurprisingly, he wants the Player of the Week award because of that. But overall, in terms of the Player of the Month, Carlos Gil gets that honor. And again, it's not a big surprise that Carlos Gil gets the honor because he was a magician in terms of the month of June. And I'm kind of happy the fact that we have another player, a different player winning Player of the Month, because I think for the first 2 months it's been Chicharito, of course, winning the Player of the Month back-to-back months. And it's not a big surprise because Chicharito has been amazing so far in these first couple of months, and there's no doubt he is right now clearly the front runner of potentially winning the MVP this year. But now, in terms of talk about the least controversial topic of this news of the week, and that, of course, is the power rankings. And as always, going to talk about the top 10 power rankings that the league published. And at number 1, unsurprisingly, is the Seattle Sounders, who I think they've been at the number 1 spot for a very long time. And as long as they don't lose a game, they're probably going to be in that number 1 position for a while now. But then in second place, we've got Sporting KC, who moved up 3 spots, followed by New England, who moved down 1 spot from last week. The same goes with Orlando City, moved down 1 spot to 4th place. And the same goes with NYCFC, moving down 1 spot from 5th place. Then you got the Union and the Galaxy staying at the same spot as last week. The Union staying at 6th place and the Galaxy staying at 7th. Before you got Nashville, who's the biggest mover in terms of the top 10, moving up 5 spots from last week. Then you got the Rapids staying at the same place as last week in 9th place. And then you got the Columbus Crew, who moved down 2 spots from last week to just stay in the top 10 of the power rankings. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of this news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these news? And as always, if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.